we don't have. So absent a tax increase, and nobody's talking about that,
Amen.
we would be cutting these programs, and this is where the federal aid is coming in to help us avoid having to reduce the per student funding in K-12 education examples. That's a very important component, and the state is getting on that plus the Medicaid component. We're getting well over $3 billion over 2 years of additional federal aid to help balance the state budget, and that's going to be extremely important in helping avoid some pretty significant reductions in education programs and other programs in the state budget.
Well, yeah, let me return to that targeting meeting. It's kind of interesting. People talk about the shutdown of the government that we had, a year ago. At that targeting meeting, because of term limits, the 5 people that got in the room, 4 of them were there for the first time. The governor was there for the 5th time. And somehow the meeting got changed, the question got changed from how do we allocate available money to let's pretend there's an additional $1.8 billion on the table. So there were no targets. So 38 budget chairmen sat on their hands waiting for a number, and everybody pilloried the legislature for sitting on their hands. We had no number. Now that did not happen last year, and it will not happen in the future. I've got a bill in the hopper that says if those 5 people get in a room and they don't come to targets by the end of May, then they will meet in continuous session till they do. And it was interesting, the governor smiled and said, "And will you cut my budget?" I said, "I checked, I can't, Governor." But I think we're past that hurdle, and I don't think we'll see that kind of targeting meeting in the future.
It is very difficult economic times, and this federal stimulus money is certainly timely in that respect to avoid, again, the idea is to avoid the states having either raised taxes or substantially cut programs. So that is what's going on. We also will be, some money will flow to local governments directly that won't be appropriated by the state, and the local units are already applying for that money. It's not a huge amount of money, but there's money for things such as homeless programs,
Yeah.
a variety of other things. Most of the money is directed to state government, but local governments are eligible for some, and of course schools are getting, the K-12 schools are
Higher
getting
ed.
a lot of it.
Yeah.
Higher ed, it's going to help us avoid cuts. We basically know because of there's also conditions on this stimulus money. It's a lot of money the state's going to receive. We're estimating around $7 billion plus total in the state budget alone will appropriate additional money. And that's on top of about $14 billion of federal funds we routinely appropriate in the budget. But there are some conditions on them, and the conditions are things like we can't reduce the operating money for universities, community colleges,
Sure.
and K-12, and that isn't just for this year, it's for this year, next year, and the following year. We cannot remove people from the Medicaid rolls, the low-income health program, while we're receiving these federal funds, and a few other things. And then a lot of the funds are just, we have to spend them exactly the way the Congress has told us. So this would be things, the K-12 education has to be spent on at-risk students, special education
Sure.
students, the weatherization money, the transportation money. So
Yeah. Well, I was disappointed. When I first heard of this, I said, my goodness, if we use this money to reduce debt, our road money, the MDOT money, something like 22% of it is debt servicing, doesn't buy any asphalt or concrete. Now, if we could reduce that debt, we could buy more asphalt and concrete, not just 1 year, but forever. Unfortunately, we're precluded from doing that.
Right. We are constantly getting guidance from Washington, D.C. about exactly how these different programs have to be spent, and the state has to follow those. We're also being audited by the federal government as we move along to make sure that we're following the conditions Congress put on the money.
In fact, one of the conditions is they sent us $2 million specifically for an office to audit all the money that's coming through. Now, that's not a bad thing. The only thing I raised is, do we have to specifically hire 4 people and put them in a room, or can we take one of those people and put them in the IT department and so forth? That's open to interpretation, but as this thing proceeds, we're going to use those 4 people, hopefully to the best of our ability, to keep track of what's happening with the money.
There's no doubt, and the part of the overall stimulus package requires states and the federal government to report exactly how the money is being spent. And so we're going to invest in that. So there's a recovery.gov, www.recovery.gov is the big, if anybody's interested, it's the federal website of how the stimulus money is being spent, and there's all sorts of information there. A lot of the money really hasn't been spent yet, so as actual expenditures go out the door, presumably there's going to be significant reporting of the $7 billion that we're going to end up appropriating in Michigan. We'll report exactly who's getting what projects get funded, and that should be available then sometime down the road on the U.S. website, recovery.gov. How it all. So if your constituents are interested, I would recommend they look at recovery.gov as the big overarching website on the federal level of this whole stimulus package.
Okay, I'm going to say it again, www.recovery.gov, G-O-V.
Correct, and that is the overarching federal government website, and sooner or later that's going to have, it has a lot of information now if people are interested in this, but it also will have much more of how money is actually being spent as expenditures actually go out the door. It's hard to judge now because we're really just appropriating this money in the state budget. The road projects will be the first things to have expenditures, and that'll be starting shortly. We're already obviously doing road projects now. We would have done otherwise, but we're going to do a lot more of them in the next couple of years because of this transportation money.
Well, you got to obligate this money by what, 120 days?
The transportation money has to be obligated very quickly, at least half of it, and then later for the rest. So we're, as I said, we're going to do everything. We, the state government, is in a collective sense, is doing everything to ensure that we follow all the rules, the guidelines set down by the federal government.
Well, fortunately, Michigan has a 5-year road plan. So we had projects stacked out for 5 years, and what we do every year is add another year after we finish one. So in that sense, we've been ahead of this game, and we should meet the requirement of 120 days fairly easily.
I don't think there's any question. The legislature has already seen a list of where this transportation money is going. It's going to be projects all over the state of Michigan, interstate highway projects, county road projects, state highway projects. All parts of the state will be receiving this transportation infrastructure money. Of course, there's great need for improving the roads in the state, especially this time of year when after the winter is over. So that money will be the first to go out the door. But other programs such as the weatherization has already been appropriated by the legislature. It takes a while to build up these programs and get the spending, but that will be happening very quickly, because the idea again of the whole stimulus is to put people to work, and if you have $244 million we've appropriated for weatherization of low-income homes, that's going to provide jobs to construction workers who don't otherwise have work because of the poor housing market. So skilled tradespeople can go in and install new windows, install insulation in homes, and that will create jobs.
Well, one thing I'm watching is one of the competitors for the transit money is a transit center proposed by Birmingham and Troy at the old railroad site on Eaton. And you know, one of the proposals is to move a rail line up Woodward with the idea of getting people a job sooner. Well, when they get to the other end in Woodward, if we don't have a transit center that actually takes them off the trains into the various places where they work, we won't have a complete system.